You know it? It's survival, right? It's a survival. How old is that? How old is
Mrs. Christensen, you want to sit over here?
Good evening. Welcome to Tide Point Talks. I know you expect Lee Lopez. I've got it as close as I can get it without eating it. Is that better now? We turned it down.
They just need to stop talking.
That's true, so shut up, you can hear me. Welcome to Tide Point Talks. I know you expect Lee Lopez to be here, but he's somewhere else, and so he's asked me to fill in and introduce our guest speaker tonight. First of all, let me remind you all to turn off your cell phones, please. Okay. Okay. Turn off your cell phones, please. Today's speaker is Hendrik Smit. You probably see him walking around campus. I do a lot, and it's nice to see you when you come to the gym as well. He and Micah have been longtime members of Tide Point, In fact, they were some of the first residents to move in here in 1999. Mika tells me that it will be 22 years next month in September that they have lived here. Hendrik was born in Amsterdam, and when he was 13 years old, Hitler's armies occupied the Netherlands. As you can imagine, the next years were full of narrow escapes and hair-raising experiences. Please join me in welcoming Hendrik Smit.
Dear Tide Point residents.
Here, wait, I'm sorry, hold on.
Here.
Forgot one important detail.
My navel.
Not your navel. Okay. Go ahead, you can start time.
This better? I'm loud. That sounds. Okay, dear Tide Point friends.
Hello, Moto.
This is an excellent manner to get to more friends, and I appreciate that opportunity that I have. My name is Hendrik Smit. I have a 96-year-old memory full of holes. I hope you will forgive some slips. During the period covered by this presentation, I was between 12 and 17 years old. I apologize for any vulgar language that is part of the territory. No interpretation, please. Interruptions, no interruptions. And would you keep your questions until the end? A bird's eye view. Hitler came to power. He made plans to build an empire. Mussolini came at the same time, and as you may remember, they were there at the same time. But I had nothing to do with Mussolini. He moved into Africa, and that was outside my territory. He invaded Sudetenland, now the Czech Republic, followed by the Netherlands, which were with the intention of moving to England. His plan included liquidating the Jews. It was a generally known fact that he hated the Jewish race. The time had come for the Jews to stay or fled. One of the first groups left for Latin America. Others went to Holland, mostly to Amsterdam, where there was a flourishing diamond industry. A number of families came to Amsterdam, and many settled in the same area as we lived in Amsterdam, which means that I had a lot of Jewish classmates in my first schools. When he attacked the Netherlands, he met little resistance. The Dutch military consisted mainly of Turks with armored plates and with infantry on bicycles. And that was no match for the German tanks. Please pay attention for this gentleman here, who is my father. The war lasted only 5 days. The royal family and the cabinet fled on one of the last steamers to London. Queen Wilhelmina, in exile, took over governing during the duration of the war. This was the beginning of the 5-year occupation. The Netherlands is an itsy-bitsy country and partly below sea level. It's about the size of a Rhode Island. There are 3 major cities: Amsterdam, the capital, The Hague, the seat of the government, and Rotterdam, a major port. Are you pointing to the?
Pointing the rivers.
Okay. Well, you should pay attention to the rivers because they play an important role in Holland. It cuts it in two. The River Rhine coming down from Switzerland and through Germany, and here it went up and in here and cut it in two halves. That plays an important role in the stories that you will be hearing about in the near future.
Okay.
The Germans sent a ultimatum to the Dutch and said, you have to surrender now or we'll bomb Rotterdam. The Dutch did not react, and the Germans sent their Stuka bombers with fire bombs and explosives to Rotterdam and really raised hell with that city. There's hardly anything left of this. It was terrible. That is the second most important city of Holland. So you can see what it did to the morale of the country. What did the people decide to do that back? What did the people decide to do for the surviving people? They decided to build air raid shelters. An air raid shelter is a very simple situation. You make a trench and you cover that with railroad steel and railroad tracks, and you put soil over it, and that is all there is. No toilet facilities or anything. So in case, they also installed sirens, very, very loud sirens that went off the moment the spotters saw airplanes coming over. That meant that they were yanking almost all day. The people went to the air raid shelters, but what you do for a city of many million people, you cannot build enough air raid shelters. So many of them never found a place, let alone lost their lives. And the other side, the Germans were building these platforms. These platforms were to install the launching devices for the rockets 1 and 2, the V1 and 2. And they sent them to London and Coventry. And they did it for many, many weeks, and they really raised hell with these two cities. Yes? Immediate steps taken by the Germans to suppress the population, bringing the population register up to date, issuing ID cards for everyone over 14, and implant the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, in several major cities. By then, we also had the SS, which a much worse part of the German occupation. But the Sicherheitsdienst was in charge of locating all Jews, then putting them on transport to concentration camps in Germany. They started the food distribution with coupon books. Now, what do you do with coupon books if you don't know what you have to distribute? So it really became a total confusion and had no effect at all. The people started trading the coupons, but they were worthless, so there probably was no food. implemented a curfew, which meant that people could only be outside the houses in daylight. After night, they either shoot at you, or just miss you, but they did a lot of firing during the nights. This is the city of Amsterdam. This center of the city was a small fisherman's village which grew and grew and grew, and every time it grew, they put new moat around it and a new wall. And as you can see, it grew and grew and grew at slices around the center of the city. Beyond there, they went to what I would call normal layout. This is the area here is the Apollo Quarter up there. I mean, yeah, there. The Apollo Quarter. And a lot of what you'll be hearing about in the next few minutes took place in that particular area. So if I refer to the Apollo Quarter, then you know where that is. I used to live down here in a very, very nice, comfortable, and new house. Among other things, it had in its facade a stone, and that stone represented the profession of the people that lived in the house. Now, we were smits, S-M-I-T, but there is also smit with a D, and smit with a D is a blacksmith. So here you see my father represented as a blacksmith, and the two sons, and the mother looking through the window. Now, this was a sort of standard procedure for people to show what the profession was, and it was sort of hanging out a tile with selling their services.
Your dad was not a blacksmith.
No. So, okay, if you take some distance from this, you can look at the house from the street, and if you saw it, it's a very nice modern villa. But the first thing that you'll see is that it has no garage. Why does it have a garage? Because the people didn't have automobiles. Automobiles had not been introduced in general, and we didn't have an automobile. So when the house was built, my father said, no automobile, no garage. Instead of that, everything went by bicycle. I went to school on the back of a bicycle, pedaled either by my mother or my father, and they pedaled 45 minutes to the school, dropped me off, went to work, came back to pick me up again, etc. You can see the commuting that they were doing just to get their little boy to the home and school. Yes? Then came an order from the Germans saying that everybody of the Jewish religion should wear this Star of David. It's a piece of cloth, pre-printed, and everybody has to fasten it onto their whatever they were wearing. This is what it looks like when you came across Jewish people in the area. Yep. Then the day came that there was an order from the Germans to evacuate all Jews. This meant, this is a picture of the Jewish families, among them families that went to school with me, going to the streetcar station. They mounted on the streetcar. The streetcar took them to the regular train station, and that train station took them to Germany, to the concentration camp, and from there, unknown destination, but we know that was in most cases the gas chambers. I saw the Nazis, bastards, move my classmates and their families to the German prison camps and beyond, and many of them died in the gas chambers. Now came the time. Where's the depression? Oh, there it is. Okay. This was one of the low points of that period. Why? First of all, we had no communication with the rest of the world. The radio was non-existent then. That was cut out by the Germans. Newspapers were cut. Television didn't exist, so that problem didn't exist. And in other words, we had no idea what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on, you start worrying. And when you start worrying, you start coming up with rumors. And then we get the whole world living on rumors. And I remember that one day someone came and said to me, you know, they've seen American tanks in Paris. And, you know, what do? You get enthused and think you're going to be liberated? Or do you think, well, that's a lot of hogwash? Well, it was a lot of hogwash. But they also said, Hitler's dead. And then, of course, everybody started cheering, but also was not true. So, we knew that it would take a long time before we were liberated. And that people started deciding to start hoarding whatever they could do as far as foodstuff concerned or other items, and get it and keep it for an unlimited period. This is the cover of a gas tank. My father came with the idea, everybody here in this area is heating their houses with oil. And that oil is in tanks. And that tank is in front of the house under the sidewalk. So how about, and since they are supposed to be empty, there may be some drab in there. And so my father took me with a little bucket and a little bump, and he lifted with a crowbar this very heavy cover, manhole cover, and I bumped out the oil, put it in a small bucket. My father consolidated all these little bits, put it in a larger container, and took that container to a friend who works at the Royal Dutch Shell, which is an oil company, and he had a way of cleaning it. So, and then he brought us back oil, beautifully clear oil. And my father said, yes, but it looks good, but let me try it. So he went and bought at an antique store a lamp. That is the lamp in which he tested that oil. And look at the light that came. Oh, it was wonderful. You could read novels with that. Fortunately, we didn't need all that oil because we still had electricity. So, although we feared that the electricity would be cut, it wasn't cut until the end of the war. That meant that we had a stock of oil. Since we had a stock of oil, we had all sorts of leverage, and we could negotiate and get food stuff and whatever it is for some oil. That helped us a heck of a lot through a very, very depressed period. One day, as I was on an oil drilling expedition, which my father had delegated to me, with a bucket and a lamp and a pump, there was bright light at the Apollo quarter. 2 villas had been set on fire by the Germans. As I approached the air raid shelter, I saw the truck with German soldiers approaching, and it stopped, and the Germans got out. Immediately after that, another truck appeared with 27 Dutch men. The Germans unloaded these 27. These 27 were people, regular people, nice young men who had been picked up at a prison pen. The Germans had a large pen where he put everybody who had ridden their bike without a light on or done a minor theft or something. Everybody was put in there. So they took 27 people and put them in the truck and brought them over and lined them up at the air raid shelter. They shot them, all of them, one by one. That I felt a horrible hate, and I've never had a feeling of hate like I did at that moment. Now, a little side trip. Why did they do this, these 27 people? That was because a couple of days earlier, some of the people of the underground who have been shadowing the commanders of the German occupying forces, and especially the SD, picked them off and killed them during the night. The result was this revenge of these 27 men. This is a statue for these 27 men, which was erected right after the war. It's about the spot where these 27 were killed. Then when I went through all this, I said, well, I got to do something. I was only a kid. And I decided to join the underground. Well, there's always a way to contact people, so I found contact and I joined the underground. Now, this is the symbol of the underground. It is a Sten gun. You may never have heard of a Sten gun, but anyway, a Sten gun was a semi-automatic gun made in England. Very simple and very efficient. These were dropped by air in pieces like this and by parachute, and the people from the resistance came down and picked up the droppings and put them together and distributed these guns to the several seats of the underground. What else did the underground do? Sabotage. Sabotaging whatever they could do to make life difficult or impossible for the Germans. Things that they did was blow up the railroad tracks for the trains that carried the Jews back to the concentration camps in Germany. Or they took the railroad tracks for the trains that brought German soldiers into Holland. And this was a very effective sabotage. Another item that they were known for was newspapers. They received text, which I will talk to you about, and printed these newspapers in stencil form, a stencil, and they were distributed by girls. The girls put them on their bicycle and went around and distributed these papers. However, this was an extremely risky job, because if the Germans stopped you with a stack of these newspapers, they shot you on the spot. A lot of girls lost their lives, and one girl who lived in our street was killed. I told you that we didn't know what the heck was going on in the world, and I remembered that there is a thing called a crystal receiver. It still exists. I think you can still get them in hobby stores, but a crystal receiver has a crystal in it, a special crystal, I don't know what it is, and a needle, and you have to maneuver the needle, and believe it or not, if you hit it at a certain point, you receive a radio station. Now, I did it, I improvised it, and believe it or not, I did get it. So I believed in it, and I started building a receiver. Here is a picture of the receiver. I got the parts in hobby stores, in any little part store, and put it together. I made this portable, and I hid it in my parents' linen closet, so that every day at 6 o'clock right, all the members of the family, and it wasn't that many, went upstairs into the linen closet and closed the door and pulled out this little gadget. And we're all listening to the radio. This was Radio Orange. It was announced itself as such. It was orange, being the royal family has the color orange, therefore it's called Radio Orange. And they had news. Obviously, they were in London and they knew what was happening in the world. So this was a tremendous source of news for us. And all of a sudden, we knew where the people, what chances are that we would be liberated, etc., etc. So this was a tremendous lift for all of us. Now on to other problems. There was no gasoline. Gasoline, when the occupation started, the gasoline came to an end. So there were no automobiles. But there were some ingenious people who built these wood block generators. You see one here. It is a cylinder, steel cylinder. It has a hole on the top, and you can throw wood blocks in there. Now, at the bottom of the cylinder is a fire, a smoldering fire. And if the wood came down before it catches fire, it smolders and gives off gas. And that gas if you put that in a pipe, you can send it up to the engine, and the car can be run on gas. And we had trucks that could move foodstuff back and forth. So this was an important thing. The Germans noticed this, and they started imitating it, and they're building them 5 times the size for the big trucks that they had. They transported soldiers and war materials, etc. What the resistance people did was at night, when these cars were parked, they would go and walk by and throw some wooden blocks in the cylinder from the top. Now these were not wooden blocks, but these were wooden blocks made from what we called dynamite. It wasn't dynamite. It was a moldable material that was called dynamite, but in reality it was something else, and you could shape it into the form of a wooden block. So nobody could see that what you were carrying was not wooden blocks, but an explosive. So you go by these trucks and throw some of these explosive blocks in the top, and it would heat up until it got to the smoldering fire, and the whole thing exploded. The truck exploded, the people in the truck exploded, and it was, and now here was another morale buster, where it showed that we could do something. We were paralyzed all the time, we couldn't do anything, but this is one of the things we could do. Now, we needed food, as you will understand, and in our case, my mother had this bicycle, and this bicycle had rubber tires. And these rubber tires were rubber. I mean, we're not rubber tires, we're wooden tires, because rubber was no longer available. So I can tell you that if a wooden tire is on your bike, it is a very unpleasant feeling. She would load a pair of shoes from my father and a bottle of cognac or some other trinkets, and she would go into the countryside. And when she got to the countryside, she found a friendly farmer, and she traded the shoes and the cognac and whatever it is for butter and chicken and what have you. So she turned around, pedaled all the way back to Amsterdam, and there she was, and she was welcome with all these goodies. In March 1944, the invasion was imminent, but we did not know that it would take place in Normandy in June 1944. Initially, the liberation of Western France, Belgium, and the Netherlands went without a hitch, but after the summer, the Allies ran into stiff resistance from the Germans. Operation Market Garden started then. It was planned and took place in September 1944. It was based on invading part of Holland by parachute. Infantry came by parachute down in that particular area that I just showed you, which is between Nijmegen and Arnhem, and which is a very nice flat area. So there was no problem landing those parachutes. Not only did they come by parachute, but they also came by glider. In England, they built wooden gliders, loaded them with infantrymen, and towed them up to the Dutch seaside, cut them off, and the glider would glide down, 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 and come down where these men were. So a very strong force was created by the parachutist and the glider man, and together they started fighting the Germans that were in that particular area. It was a bloody battle, and the Battle of Arnhem was a disaster and caused the death of nearly 4,000 Americans, 11,000 British, and 14,000 Polish. Now, that's a little side story about these Polish, because when I heard that, I couldn't believe it. But I looked into the history of what all happened. But because Poland is way away from Holland. They were not next to a neighbor that came and helped. No, I'm not going to tell you that story because that's another afternoon. But they came and the Polish people came, yes, okay. Okay. Soldiers, it also caused prolonged German occupation of Western Holland and famine that caused 21,000 deaths. Only in May 45 was the western part of Holland liberated. By then, Hitler had committed suicide on April 30th, 45, leaving the German army no choice but to surrender. That was the end of the occupation. Queen Wilhelmina, her family, and the members of the cabinet immediately returned to Holland. Prince Bernhard, upon arrival, decorated all members that had been active in the resistance movement with a decoration that I proudly wear on my lapel.
Would you go back to the pictures? Look at the picture. That's the food drop.
Okay, the Red Cross and the Americans started dropping food, canned food mostly, and as you can see, the population went ape. They did that for a little while and discovered that it could be done. So they made it into a regular airlift and an American plane with Red Cross food. May I have the other slide? No?
Two slides.
Oh, there it is. Hey. It's still the same place, yes. Okay, now this was an air bridge which for several weeks supplied all of Holland with all the food they needed. Incredible project, and the Dutch were very grateful when this took place. Now the liberation took place, and here is an example of a Canadian tank. You can't even see the tank anymore, with the liberated Dutch people and a little Canadian soldier there. And Holland was full of these scenes. It was, people went wild. This is the little emblem that I have on my lapel. And then, is there another one?
No, this is the.
Oh, this is the other. Okay, sorry. Thank you for attention.
Questions? Will you take questions?
Any any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Why did they decide to attack Rotterdam rather than The Hague or Amsterdam?
You've got to ask the Germans and they're all dead.
I thought history was
Thank you.